This is Daniel Crawford here, and this is my new show, which I like to call Extra Extra Bell to Bell. Now, of course, this is the Bell to Bell review, and in this show, and I wanted to debut this show a little bit over a week ago, but some things came up. I believe my original plan to launch this was about 10 days ago. But either way, here we are. This will be posted on All Saints Day, November 1st, 2020. And what I want this to be is a weekly YouTube show wherein I review the week in wrestling beforehand. So, in this first installment, I'm going to be talking about Hell in a Cell, which was on October 25th, Raw, NXT, AEW, and Smackdown. Now, in the future, I'd like to, involve other wrestling shows as well, but right now, my time is precious, I guess you could say, being a single father, and I want to make sure that I maximize this time and your attention to the best of my ability. So, in this first installment here, I want to sort of lay down the, I guess you could say, ground rules here, or how this thing's going to work out. First and foremost, as part of this show, I have my outline here. I want to talk about a number of things. First, I'm going to offer to you what I think are the top 5 matches of professional wrestling of the week. Then, of course, I'm going to introduce my 10 scale, which I'm going to do that here momentarily, and I'll get more into what the 10 scale is. Of course, that's my scale for how I score each match that I see. And, of course, I'll also integrate a scale for measuring how backstage promos and in-ring promos unfold, as well as video packages and whatnot. Then, of course, I will be talking about the best show of the week, the best heel moment of the week, the story that is on fire this week, emphasizing any new rising stars that I see, the promo master of the week. These are all things that will be integrated over time. And, of course, favorite commentary moment of the week, this week in wrestling history, and I'll be also promoting some other things here momentarily. So, I'm not going to get into all of that here. I'm going to try and make this show as straight and to the point as possible. Trying to keep your interest throughout the whole thing. So, first and foremost in this show, I kind of want to do a rundown of what I thought of each episode. But before I did that, let me, as I promised I would do, talk to you about the wrestling scorecard. So, I developed the wrestling scorecard, and it is basically a measurement of match quality. And I'll kind of go down the line here of how I give points for match quality. And let me, of course, create a little bit of a context here. Part of the reason why I created this scorecard is because I get tired of seeing these arbitrary measurements of matches, people giving it 5 stars, 6 stars, whatever. You see Dave Meltzer, who's, a world-renowned wrestling journalist. He sort of almost arbitrarily gives a certain number of stars to matches, which of course could be fair, unfair. It's all a matter of perspective. This is all from my perspective. This doesn't mean that you can't enjoy a match more than I did, or vice versa. So, sorry, I hit my little belt here. My best friend got me. Moving on. So, how do I measure these matches? So I affix points according to the following standards, and it's 1 point per standard that they've met. Number 1, appropriate length of match for the story and characters involved. So, if it's supposed to be a squash match, and it makes sense in that context, I affix a point for that reason. If the story justifies a longer match than what you get, then I will deduct points for that reason if it doesn't make sense. So at least once again, this is all from my perspective. Number 2, another reason I affix points is for innovation of the maneuvers that are used. Now I get it, not every match is going to involve innovative maneuvers, but it's nice to see it from time to time. Of course, you don't have to use something brand new every time. You can use an innovative maneuver that you've done before. And it's whatever makes sense for the match, essentially. Number 3, desired engagement from the crowd. Now, of course, right now during the pandemic era, we have to, I guess, use your imagination here. So if you feel that you're involved, and it's almost biased to a degree, but when we see crowds return to these shows, this point right here will become more important than what it is now. But if I feel myself involved in the match, then I guess right now, until the pandemic ends, I will be affixing points for that reason. Number 4, justified brutality level. So if a match calls for extreme brutality, then by all means I expect it to have such. If it doesn't call for that, or if it's not 100% necessary, then, you know, it's all according to that measurement. Quality of the story told during the match. So this is important to me because not only is it important to see a story in a match, it's also important to see a quality match, you know, a quality story told. So if the match's story that is told is not very good quality, then I may deduct points for that. It's just, it depends. Number 6, appropriate pacing to maintain interest. So this is sort of related to the desired engagement from the crowd, but what I can look at here, I separate this into 2 different point standards, because it's one thing to get the desired engagement from the crowd. It's another thing to at least put the effort into getting that engagement. So that's where I got this. So if the athletes, if the performers are trying to get the engagement of the crowd, if they're trying to have the appropriate pacing, I will give them points for that, for at least trying. So there's that. Number 7, desired advancement resolution of the story via match conclusion. So this might seem like it's similar to the quality of the story. However, I think this is important as a separate question, because if there is a certain outcome that you're expecting or that you're led to expect, then that sort of will influence this. However, if it makes sense to give you a twist and sort of advance the story even further in a different way than what you were expecting, then that's okay too. But if the outcome doesn't make sense, then yeah, you will have points deducted. Number 8, believability. I have to be able to believe what's going on in the ring, and I think we all can agree with that. So that's what I think is important here to consider points. Is it believable? Number 9, a path forward for the participants in the aftermath. I think that this is important because if you have one performer who has a clear path forward, who can recover or, you know, progress, can in some way succeed as a result of this match, or not be held back, not be hurt too badly by it, then I think that deserves points. Like, both or all participants need to have some kind of path forward. Now, this is harder to consider when it comes to squash matches, which is why I'm not a giant fan of squash matches, because unless you have like a monster, in which case that, you know, you can see them being justified as someone who just comes in and dominates, it doesn't really hurt the person they're dominating because they're on a different level. However, to have like a series of squash matches, I think could be meaningless. So I think like maybe 2 or 3 squash matches, at least to establish a new beast, is okay, but you got to be careful after you get beyond that, I think. Number 10, no real-life injuries. So I think that this is important to consider points for, because while it's awesome to see wrestlers put their life on the line, their bodies on the line to a certain degree, it's also not necessary. It's been a long time since the days of the Attitude Era when these athletes had to go above and beyond to get our attention. Unfortunately, the absolute majority, the vast majority of wrestling fans from the Attitude Era are gone. You know, they've lost interest in this industry completely. So my thinking here is that if you can avoid risks of injury, that's great. I don't like to see injuries, and I think that point should be deducted as a result of injuries that could have been otherwise avoided. So that's it. And of course, I put on here that I'll be grading on an A to F scale. Average grade of all matches in a card affects the overall grade for the event. So I'll get more into that momentarily. And like I said, just to recap on what the outline is for the show, at least moving forward, over time I will be introducing the best, well, I may actually tell you what the best show of the week is, best heel moment of the week. I might briefly highlight this stuff, and so forth and so on. But I can't guarantee that all this will be in every episode, but I'm going to try and make this makes as much sense as possible. So let's start with talking about Hell in a Cell. The 2020 edition, October 25th. I thought it was a great show. So I'm not going to go through every segment here, but there were 7 matches on the card, and I love I'm pretty much, you're never going to fail, it seems, with WWE's opening video packages. And I'm so happy that, starting last year with SummerSlam, they brought back Pyro, and they've not looked back since then, at least pay-per-view Pyro. And it's just been awesome since then. Like, I've enjoyed it thoroughly. The only pay-per-view Pyro that was disappointing to me was the Royal Rumble, that Pyro, which we didn't even see Pyro for that until Edge returned. And I think, no, actually, correction. When Charlotte won the Women's Royal Rumble, that's when you first saw pyro. And then when Edge returned, there was like the biggest pyro of the night. So I wasn't a fan of that. But the pyro, with the exception of the pay-per-views that understandably took place in the Performance Center, because they couldn't have pyro there. With the exception of that pyro, I think they've been pretty good. Now, I would like to see NXT take their pay-per-views to like a bigger venue so we can see actual pyro for them. But I guess we haven't seen any pyro for them. I haven't watched any of the older NXT pay-per-views, but so either way, always loved the video packages. The pyro was great as well. It's been getting really cool. I love this Thunderdome and how it allows them to be really creative with the pyro. But we had matches including 24/7 Championship match, Truth versus Drew Gulak. I gave that match an 8. Roman Reigns versus Jey Uso started off the pay-per-view pretty interestingly. In the Hell in a Cell, the I Quit match, I loved this match. It was probably my favorite match of the night. I gave a number of matches 10 ratings, and this was definitely one of them. There was no way I could avoid giving this match that. It was an easy 10. After that, we had this Jeff Hardy versus Elias match. I had predicted before I watched this pay-per-view via my podcast. I predicted that Elias would win this to continue the story, and I was right. And I knew it was likely to be by some kind of underhanded thing, and he won by DQ. He drove Jeff Hardy to kind of go insane. So I gave this match a 9, and I think that it deserved a 9 just because no one really likes that kind of outcome. I don't know. I may have taken like half points away from some of this stuff. I felt like it deserved a 9 at that time based on that rating scale. After that, we saw Miz versus Otis for the Money in the Bank. Now, I had a little bit of trouble predicting this match. I thought, at first I thought it could be Otis or Miz. Like, I was going back and forth. But I could see a path forward for either way, especially considering the Law and Otis segment that we had seen the previous week on Smackdown. But this match ended up with Miz winning, and I thought the twist and everything, I thought it was a good match. I thought that the story they told was good, and I gave it a 10. Then, of course, you saw the Women's Hell in a Cell for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Sasha versus Bayley, they tore the house down. This match was one of the reasons why I had a hard time saying the I Quit match was my favorite match of the night, because this match was so good. Like, very good. Like, I've been looking forward to this fight for a few years now, since I started watching WWE again. And I wasn't watching WWE when Sasha and Bayley fought the first time around. And that was something I looked forward to seeing. They've been teasing it for a few years now, and finally they brought it, and they definitely delivered. So I was happy with it. Once again, I gave that a 10. Then we saw Bobby Lashley take on Slapjack. This match, I think, actually kind of replaced the match that was supposed to be between The Fiend and T-Bar, I guess. I don't know why they abandoned that match, but maybe it just didn't think it would advance the story very well, and probably saw that there was a better path forward for The Fiend, as we'll get into momentarily. But Lashley versus Slapjack, that was interesting, but I only gave that match a 7, mostly because it was kind of put together, kind of last minute. It was kind of weird how it was put together. The story, it just seemed kind of random. And I feel so bad saying that, and I'll get more into this again with the Retribution, but I want to like the Retribution. I so desperately want to be invested in this because I like Mustafa Ali, I like Retribution, I like the whole concept behind it. It's just, you have all these puzzle pieces that aren't being put together, although you have the potential. They all can be put together, but they're not doing it. Like, they did a great job of tying things in with Mustafa Ali being the hacker, along with Retribution. Like they have it all there. All the ingredients are there. But some idiot and creative is not, or maybe it's Vince standing in the way, but he often stands in his own way when it comes to doing this stuff. But it's unfortunate because the guy, he's had a history of being able to deliver the best moments in this industry's history. So he needs to get out of his own way, because this story has the potential to be great, but they are rapidly now losing a lot of people who are just caring about it. So save it, please. Finally, main event, Hell in a Cell between Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton. I had kind of predicted Randy Orton would win this match because it made sense to me that Randy Orton would win. I went back and forth a little bit before I made my prediction, but I made it official when I recorded the podcast before it that I thought Randy Orton was going to win, because I thought that was the trajectory of this story. And it made sense to me. And Drew McIntyre is definitely not out of the title picture. He held the championship for what, 6 months, for half a year. So it made sense, almost 7 months actually. So he's definitely been appreciated. I've enjoyed Drew McIntyre as world champion, but seeing Randy Orton win the title for the 14th time, it was definitely awesome. I enjoyed that. So that was Hell in a Cell. The overall score I gave the event was a 10, and here's how I figured that out. So while you do the average of the oldest matches, it comes out to be a 9.14. The reason I get to a 10 is because the way I determine points for the overall event, I also include backstage segments as well as video packages and all that. So if all of that averages out to what I consider to be like a 1 point, and that all averages out, I give it like a 1 extra point to add as a bonus point. And of course you could have anywhere between 0 to 0.5 to 1, anywhere in that area. And of course if you don't get 1 whole point, then you only add a fraction of a point. Or if you get 0, then it's unlikely you're going to have 0 good backstage segments and everything. So anyways, the extra segments, I didn't have any bad ones. They were all 1, so average out to an extra point. But I cap everything at 10. That's the highest score you can get. So instead of being like a 10.14, it's just a 10. So I thoroughly enjoyed the pay-per-view. Not everyone agrees, I know, but you know what? All a matter of perspective, as I mentioned before. So now we're just going to go quickly over to Raw. Raw had a lot more segments. I'm not going to go down the whole list here. There were quite a few. Raw's still really good about promos and backstage segments. Not everyone agreed that everything was good about Raw. I get that. I thoroughly enjoyed the Firefly Funhouse. Everything involving Bray Wyatt, Randy Orton, Alexa Bliss, and Drew McIntyre, all of this, it's amazingly coming together. I am enjoying it thoroughly. So I don't see how they can go wrong with that story. Could they still botch it? Of course they could. But I think it's been great. There was a match that I gave an 8 to. That was AJ versus Jeff Hardy. A match I gave a 7 to. That was Lucha House Party versus Tozawa and Drew Gulak. But it was kind of a funny twist there because R-Truth came down during and after the match, caused chaos. And R-Truth is always going to be funny to me. He's amazing. I love him to death. He's one of my favorite parts of WWE, of wrestling in general. But you had other matches that were 8s. I don't remember giving any match a 10 for Raw. You had, you had some decent stuff. Some weird way of trying to decide who the women's Raw team is going to be for Survivor Series. But I like how they were trying to determine how the men's team was going to be. Keith Lee's been put on the team. That was good. You saw Retribution take another loss, but they took it by a DQ. So they're trying to protect them in a way. And then Mustafa Ali came out with this correct, goofy promo saying that wins and losses don't matter to them. This is where I'm afraid they're going to lose even more fans. Look, I give things a chance over a long period of time. I'm very patient with stories. I try to be, at least. But wrestling fans are, as Daniel Bryan's heel character called, fickle. You need to captivate them, immediately. If you don't, you lose them. And they've captivated people, and then they've lost people over and over again with the Retribution storyline. They had me hooked within those first couple weeks, but then they took too long to reveal them. But then they brought him in, and all of a sudden they revealed Mustafa Ali to be their leader. And then, of course, they lost a little bit of momentum even after that, crazily enough. But then they had him reveal he was the hacker. They keep looping you in, and then they lose you. They need to have these guys become dominant. They can't just be guys who beat the crap out of everyone backstage and then lose in the ring. That just can't happen. Make sense of this. Come on, guys. So it's just, you're failing these great competitors in this potentially great storyline. Survivor Series has to be the end of the story, or they have to make this make sense by Survivor Series, or they just have to scrap it at that point. That's what I'm trying to say. So, yeah, there was at least one 9 match I gave a 9 to. Quite a few matches I gave an 8 to. There was at least one backstage segment that I didn't care for too much, where Adam Pearce was with the women's Raw team, or prospective Raw team, with Nia Jackson, Shayna, Mandy Rose, and Dana Brooke. It wasn't bad. I love this team of Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax, but this segment was just awkward because it's kind of almost like it was haphazardly put together. And then, of course, you had this whole thing with Randy Orton and Edge at the end, which was an awesome way of tying the event up. Oh, yeah, there was a match I gave a 10 to. That was the qualifying match for the Survivor Series, Sheamus versus Matt Riddle. And I will keep calling him Matt Riddle. I don't care what the hell you call him. Anyways, this show, overall, I gave it like all of its match averages came out to an 8.35. When I added the averages for all the backstage segments, which were mostly ones that I gave to, except for that 1.5 I gave to, it's the average rate for Raw I gave a 9.32. So looks like it was perhaps my least favorite wrestling event of the week. Yeah, it was by a hair, and you'll hear about that here in a second. It was my least favorite by a hair. Then we go to NXT Halloween Havoc. My God, this was a fantastic show. I cannot say enough great things about this show. I think I gave every match a 10. And now that I'm looking through this, no, except for one. I gave every match except for one a 10. There was the Cruiserweight Championship match, Jake Atlas and Santos Escobar, which was good. It just, you know, it was just kind of probably more of a pacing thing than anything. I kind of write these ratings in the heat of the moment, I guess you can say, but every other match, like Dexter Lumis and Cameron Grimes, like the two parts to the Haunted House of Terrors, I loved that match. That match had me captivated. It fit in perfectly with the whole Halloween Havoc concept. You know, I enjoyed it thoroughly. So please, please, please do more of that. Yeah, I loved it. We haven't seen these we haven't seen these cinematic matches in a few weeks. Actually, we almost forgot about it. But then this match brought it back in a really good way. So I was very happy with it. And yeah, it's just this little Poppy concert, the Women's Championship match, that ladder match, or well, the tables, ladders, and scares match. I mean, everything about this event was just great, and it became my favorite event of the week. And because when you consider all the match ratings, and then like the match ratings, when you put them all together and average them out, was 9.6 because of that 8 the 8 rating I gave, but everything else was a 10. And then all the backstage segments, which were just fantastic. If I had not capped it at 10, it would have been a 10.6, but I capped it at 10, so that was its final rating. And yeah, Halloween Havoc was just spectacular. I enjoyed it. Definitely my favorite show of the week. AEW Dynamite. So I have a love-hate relationship with AEW. There's times where I'm absolutely invested in it. I completely care about it. Their matches, they're still, for the most part, they're really good on. But then there's also things that they do that just make absolutely no sense, because you can tell like the wrestlers themselves were just completely in charge, which I can appreciate what AEW is trying to do with this whole giving the wrestlers creative control. But I am not a big fan of doing it all the time. Like, they really should have a process where they sort of, you know, assess their athletes' ideas and, you know, sort of determine whether or not it should be going. Like, there's a reason Vince McMahon does what he does. Like, I get it. It's frustrating. It's annoying to have your ideas shut down, but we haven't seen Brody Lee since he lost. I guarantee, like, I know that they're probably looking to try and build him up again, but then again, he lost to Jon Moxley back in May at Double or Nothing, shortly after his debut for the world title. Then he crushed Cody for the TNT Championship, only to lose to Cody in a dog collar match shortly after Cody came back. Like, how is he supposed to be a monster? I really enjoy Brody Lee. I thought I was frustrated with the fact that he wasn't really focused on at all in WWE, but in AEW he's been enjoyable until they've I hate using the word buried, but they've almost buried him with the way they brought Cody in, and he's just like, oh, I'm going to take the title back, and then we don't see Brody Lee anymore. Like, it's frustrating. It's kind of frustrating, at least for me as a fan. Hopefully Brody Lee's enjoying himself, but I'm just, as a fan, it's frustrating to me. So, yeah, there were, from what I'm looking at here, okay, there were a few backstage segments I didn't care for. Like, I didn't really care for the Miro and Sabian with the best friends thing about the stupid video game store. Like, I love Miro, you know, Rusev, whatever you want to call him. He's a great wrestler. But this stupid storyline over video games, like, I get it, he and Sabian are best friends because or they're really good friends over a video game, but I'm not digging this storyline. I'm sorry. I feel bad for saying it, but I'm just not into it. Also, I was lukewarm on the whole Taz trying to recruit Hobbs to Team Taz, which, you know, I'm fine with it, but just because a lot of these stories take place on Dark, I don't watch Dark. I don't have the time to, especially when it's like 2.5 hours long. Like, I already watch a 3-hour-long Raw. Why would I want to watch a 2.5-hour-long Dark show that's not even on television? It's just on YouTube. Like, granted, I have the option to look at it, but there's important storylines that are going on there, but they're depriving some important stories from happening on Dynamite where it should matter. And then, of course, another thing I didn't care for was this whole random Sheeta challenging Nyla Rose, who's been like the #1 contender for the women's title for months, but now she's finally getting a shot. Like, I love Sheeta, but the booking of the women's division is atrocious. Like, I hate it. I hate it. That's why, like, the worst match for me of Dynamite was the women's title match, the NWA women's title match. Like, why are they having NWA women's championship matches on Dynamite? Like, I get it. Ring of Honor's done it. WCW used to do it. Heck, even WWE had, I think it was the NWA tag team titles defended back in the Attitude Era. Sort of like as like a sideshow. They brought Cornette back and he brought in Bob Holly and everything to be like the new Rockers or what, I can't remember what the heck they were called. But anyways, the Midnight Express or something like that. Anyways, when you consider the way they've booked this, they've almost devalued the AEW Women's Championship. Because you're seeing the NWA Women's Championship defended when there should be a story involving the people in AEW's women's division that we know of. How am I supposed to care about the AEW women's division if all their stupid storylines are taking place on Dark? This is the part where I want to kind of rant, because it's like, AEW, I'm trying to give you guys a chance, but you're kind of losing me here. Like, it comes to a point where it's almost becoming a chore to watch your product, despite the fact that I've been watching since the beginning of AEW. The only event I didn't watch was All Out, or All In, I mean. That was the only event I didn't watch, was I guess, sort of your first event. But other than that, I've watched every single official AEW event, with the exception of Dark. That's the only one I haven't consistently watched. But all of the others, I've been watching them. And I even ordered your crappy All Out pay-per-view that you guys had in August. I'm sorry, a lot of people were okay with it. I was not okay with it. That was not worth $50. I'm going to order Full Gear, but I'm going to do it sort of biting my tongue, sort of holding my nose, hoping that you guys surprise me and give me a great pay-per-view, because the card looks great. It's a stacked card, has the potential to be great, but please deliver. I'm begging you. Give me a reason to keep watching, because I'm there. I'm almost there. But there were some, really good spots. Like the tournament matches were good. I thoroughly enjoyed Page versus Wardlow. I actually thought Wardlow might... Well, actually, no, I didn't really think Wardlow was going to win. I knew Page was going to win because they're setting us up for Omega versus Page. But I love the Page versus Wardlow match. I was kind of lukewarm on Kingston versus Sydal. Like, I like Eddie Kingston, but the whole build here has just been kind of weird because of how it came up. Which, I get it. They're trying to be creative and, sort of using twists that are forced upon them. But, Moxley's promo for Full Gear was good. I really like that. Trying to randomly scroll through here so you don't have to watch me for an hour going through the whole event. But I also really love the main event between Penta and Omega. That was a good way to cap off the show. But overall, the show got a 9.33 from me. And that was, before I factored in the backstage segments and the promos, it was an 8.5, with all the matches. So it was definitely, match-wise, for me, the worst show of the week. It just was, for me. I'm going to fact check that real quick. Okay, no, it wasn't. It was the second worst show of the week, match-wise, because of Raw. It was a little bit lower. But this show, like I said, Raw was a 9.32. This was a 9.33. So it was barely a smidge above Raw. So second worst show of the week, in my view. Then we had the granddaddy of them all, Smackdown. Smackdown was undoubtedly, in my view, the best show in wrestling. It just is. However, interestingly, the average match rating that I gave it was an 8.5. So it is competitive. It was competitive with AEW. So the best event match-wise was Halloween Havoc. Well, actually, sorry. Yeah, it was still Halloween Havoc. So yeah. And Halloween Havoc means it actually beat Hell in a Cell. So either way, regardless, I gave the show a 10. If I had considered, the boosted ratings, it would have been what was it, like a 9, like a 10.25 or something like that. Either way, actually no, excuse me, it was an 8.25 match-wise. I'm guessing. Excuse me. Yes, because the Survivor Series match, Bianca Belair versus Natty versus Billie Kay, I gave it a 7. I was fine with the ending. I love Bianca Belair. I love Billie Kay and I love Natty. Just this match came off really awkward, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Billie Kay in the future. Hopefully they do great things with her, and I was happy with the outcome. It's just the match itself just didn't come out right. But I liked Lars Sullivan giving him kind of his origin story. That was a great promo, I thought. The opening bout between Kevin Owens and Dolph Ziggler was amazing. It was fantastic. And ultimately, like, you had some really great matches. Like, you had all 10s except for that one match. That's kind of what dragged the rating down. But it had, like, more consistent good ratings than a lot of the other shows. But all the backstage segments were perfect. They were just great. Especially everything involving Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. This whole thing where Jey Uso kind of turns heel to sort of, serve the will of Roman Reigns. Fantastic show. Overall rating was a 10. Would have been a 10.25 because apparently I forgot it would have been a 9.25, which I forgot to edit that. So yeah, I guess it was one of the better shows. Sorry, forgive me. I am jumping all over the place up here. And I promise in the future, like I do with the podcast, that I will try to become more organized with my thoughts here. Actually, that's what I'm going to do. Anyways, moving on. This show, like I said, was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I always enjoy SmackDown. It's a shame to a degree that The Fiend and Alexa are on Raw, but I'm going to look forward to the Fiend versus Orton in the near future. But it's been great. I mean, great wrestling. Granted, not everything's perfect with this, but I'm okay with not everything being perfect because we're getting some great wrestling out of this here. So, when you look at that, what was the best show of the week? I just said it. Halloween Havoc. Definitely the best show of the week. I cannot say enough good things. Best heel moment of the week. When I look through all the heel moments, what do I think stands out? Roman Reigns. I mean, it's hard to defeat Roman Reigns in his heel moments. And collectively, everything he's done over the course of this past week, the epic story told during the Hell in a Cell I Quit match, the opening of Smackdown where he tries to get Jey Uso to basically bend the knee and acknowledge him and come into the fold. All of that. That's the epic heel moment of the week. Is Roman Reigns rising up and becoming this beast that we never knew he was. Let me see. Story that is on fire this week. Well, I would say out of all that, it's still Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. I say that even considering that I think a very close second is the Fiend, Orton, Drew McIntyre sort of triangle story. Along with Alexa Bliss, because Alexa looks like she's about to start attacking the women's division in a fiendish way. I'm loving that. Let me see. New Rising Stars. This is going to seem somewhat controversial, but Lars Sullivan has the potential to be a new rising star. You may not agree with that, but I think he's got it. I think he's almost there. So I'm going to better organize this next time, a week from today. But keep an eye on Lars Sullivan because his story is only beginning to be told. Promo Master of the Week. I keep coming back to Roman Reigns. This is despite the fact that you had some great stuff from Jon Moxley as well as from Randy Orton. It's just Roman sticks out. I know people are probably going to think, oh, you're just a WWE mark, burying AEW. I'm like, I'm sorry. Things for AEW this week did not stand out for me. And next week is their go-home show for Full Gear. So hopefully they stand out that week. But there's a reason they lost in the ratings, although it barely matters. But they lost in the ratings to Halloween Havoc. And I know they're leading overwhelmingly in the series, but I'm just saying, there's a reason. And then, of course, favorite commentary moment of the week. There's quite a few. It usually involves Corey Graves and Michael Cole. And that was pretty much the case this week. There was a moment that has stuck out for me. No, actually, no. Now that I remember, it was actually an NXT Halloween Havoc. This costume contest that went between Wade Barrett and Vic Joseph. Vic Joseph, who's apparently been sitting beside Wade Barrett this whole time. Barrett just happens to notice that he's dressed up as Waldo. And he's like, Vic Joseph's like, well, you challenged me to a costume contest. That's what I came for. And Wade was like, he just basically insults him. And then he says that he came as his favorite wrestler. Bad news Barrett. And I laughed with that. But there were some great moments with Corey Graves. And I wish I had wrote them down because SmackDown is it's so great at times. Mostly because of Corey Graves at times. Actually, another person you need to keep your eye on is the return of Carmella. I'm looking forward to seeing what to do with that. This week in wrestling history, I forgot to actually find something for that. Some great things have happened in wrestling. I watched the WWE documentary about That's Gotta Be Kane, the debut of Kane's character. Such an epic story. I invite you to go back and watch some events from '97, from the summer of '97 up through the debut of Kane. The whole building of that background story is one of my favorite builds ever. And I still talk about it, still talk to people about it to this day, mostly because I was lucky enough at the age of 12 at the time to watch it unfold. It was awesome. And with that, this has been a lengthy episode. I'm hoping that you stayed entertained throughout and engaged. I'm looking forward to doing future episodes that are better organized and more fun. But my podcast, that is sort of like a sister to this, although it's older than this, is Wrestling Today Extra Extra. It is, of course, a offshoot of sorts, a spin-off rather, of Wrestling Today, which was between myself and Jeff Murray, my best friend. But he has since dropped out of the whole podcasting business, if you will. But I wanted to stay involved because I like podcasting. I like talking about this stuff because it makes life fun. So with that, please look out for that podcast and visit my website, danielcrawford.org, where you can see other things that I've created. So thank you for your time, and I hope you have a good one.